Seguimos en el Mobile World Congress 2014 haciendo una cobertura de lo que está sucediendo en el Congreso y tratamos uno de los temas más sexys del Congreso, que es OTTs versus telco, que es un tema muy importante porque evidentemente afecta al revenue de los operadores en sus servicios más importantes. Tenemos con nosotros a Mark de la empresa OpenCloud, también tenemos a Pascal de Streamwide y a Nitin de la empresa Opera, con quien vamos a estar hablando en inglés sobre el tema de los OTTs versus telco. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on this discussion on OTTs versus telco. Very hot topic, probably the hottest topic, I think, in terms of being sexiness, its sexiness. First question is, could you describe me how you see the market in terms of OTTs? Obviously, Mark Zuckerberg has been the star of this event. Mark Zuckerberg runs an OTT, and this is a telco show, but they have stolen the show already here. Tell us what's the dynamics in the market. Mark, if you want to start.
Sure. So from our perspective, it's not a question of there being just one winner at the end. You know, OTT services are here to stay. It's a question of how operators change to find their niche in this new market. And I think within that, there are certainly questions about whether messaging or voice video services, other types of services, you know, which of these should the operators be focusing on, and identifying how they're going to actually retain that market share under that new competition.
Okay, now you said niche. Should operators have a niche? I mean, it seems like the niche should be for the other guys, not for the operators, no?
Well,
or niche could be like a very big niche.
When we look at person-to-person communications with new technologies like WebRTC, the whole dynamic of how we will communicate, how those communications will be stimulated, is going to change. And I think it's somewhat irrational to assume that operators will have a role in every single part of that market. So yes, I think the market is going to, for operators, will focus somewhat.
Okay. Pascal?
Well, the big question for operators is to know whether they're going to sell gigabytes only or they're going to sell services. And right now, there are a couple of them who think, well, the battle is lost. We're going to sell gigabytes.
Okay.
And we're going to fight on cents per gigabytes. I think this is not the right way to go. Actually, they can try to keep their customers and sell services on top of what they have today, provided they understand that the situation is not, I would say, stable. You know, when Zuckerberg bought WhatsApp for $19 billion, a couple of weeks before, the CEO of WhatsApp said there is no business model for our application.
He said that?
He said that.
Interesting.
All right? So we've known that during the internet bubble, you know, when there is no business model, at the end somebody has to pay.
Yeah.
In order to justify the $19 billion, there must be a revenue of around $1 billion in the coming 3 years coming out of WhatsApp. Otherwise, it's a bad financial decision. This means that they will need a way to monetize their business. And to my knowledge, there is still no clue about how they're going to do that. And the promise that has been made to their users is going to soon change, right? At this stage, there is a big opportunity for operators, at least those that still think that they need to have a relationship with their customers, to be there when customers will understand that if something is free, then the product is you.
Yeah, well, actually, we could start with the assumption that nothing is free. That's, I guess, is a fair assumption to make. Nitin?
Yeah, we think that there's definitely an opportunity to collaborate, right? And but there's no doubt that OTT services are here to stay, right? The internet has made everything flat, right? You don't have to go do operator by operator deals anymore. That means that growth is just insane, right? You can go from nothing to 10 million to 100 million in a year. Right? That never happened.
Actually, we discussed before camera that even in 4 hours you could get 5 million users.
Right. That never happened in the history, right? So the challenge or the trick is really to figure out how do we cooperate with each other. Opera, for instance, we have 350 million monthly active users, right? So in some sense, we're an OTT player. But clearly at the core, we're an operator-centric company, right? So we partner with operators so that when there is a partnership, our OTT experience gets enhanced, right? With operator services that seamlessly work inside the same product, right? So So everybody, all our users, all 350 million of them, get the great user experience. But then some of them who are on our partner networks get enhanced services, right? And so we think that that's the kind of collaboration that we'll see more of in the coming years.
Discussing collaboration, and I want to know also your take on collaboration. You were mentioning and bringing some of the things that you guys mentioned as well. We're talking about collaborating between companies that, as Pascal was saying, have no clear business model or no business model at all, supposedly. I'm going to put that in quotes. Versus companies that supposedly they only launch services when they know clearly where the revenue is going to come from. So how can we match companies that have either a different business model, whether it's advertising or whatever, to provide free messaging services, for example, versus companies that if they offer a service, they usually want to monetize that service directly. So how do we match that? Is there any match?
So I think Pascal made a really good point there. The first question is for the operators, do you want to be in the services industry or not? Are you just going to be a bit pipe? For those that want to be in the services industry, it is about finding new ways to keep your customers engaged with your brand. And that means having new services, and whether it's through working in collaboration with other providers to provide new services to your customers, or whether that's innovating for yourself, it has to be done. Now the question of monetization is a key one, because you don't have to monetize the service directly, because if you're keeping them relevant, you don't have to, because for an operator, because what they're selling is the megabytes or the gigabytes per month. You know, that's the product, but part of the user experience is all these other services and capabilities that are provided perhaps for free.
Yeah, at the application level, the mindset has to change, right? This is not a huge capital outlay upfront, right? And so the concepts of ARPU and the concepts of immediate and direct monetization has to change, right? Otherwise, we'll continue to see more and more WhatsApps and Facebooks, and there are companies out there that can build massive businesses now by first providing users value, and then figuring out how to extract value from that indirectly, right? Yeah. And so that's one thing. I think on the other hand, another thing shift that will have to happen is the definition of customer, right? If you ask an operator, they still define their subscribers as their customers. If you want to be relevant in OTT, you have to the whole world is your customer, right? So how do you design services that don't only work for your subscribers, but for the whole world, right? That's I think the big disruption of OTT is that the whole world is your customer.
So Pascal, in your view, do you think operators need to change their mentality in terms of, because as I was saying, operators want to create a service and directly monetize that service, and both Nitin and Mark are saying indirect revenue is going to be the game?
Well, actually, the big value of the operators is their subscriber base, right? Right now, what's happening...
I thought it was the network also. No?
Well, it's another part of the value, but it's a given. Definitely they need to have a network in order to do anything.
To have subscribers, yeah.
So once you have this layer, which now is available to everybody, including the OTTs, you need to differentiate on something else if you want to be in a service business, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so this value that they are trying to extract from the operators is actually the knowledge of the customer. You know, what's behind. And more or less Facebook say that, is that they want to be able to link the Facebook account to the phone number. In other words, they want to be able to extract the value that the operators have been building on their subscriber base, knowledge of the subscriber and all this, from the operators to their advantage. Okay. If the operators let it go this way, I mean, they're going to be dumb pipes. If they propose their own services, and once again, thinking that the situation is not stable and it's going to evolve very quickly, and they are able to change at this speed, and hopefully Streamwide is able to propose the kind of services and systems that allow the customers to be at Google speed, I would say, then they can do something. And they must prepare it now in order for them to be ready in 2 or 3 years when the scenery will have changed, and suddenly people will realize that there is nothing for free, and that what may look like free is actually sucking information about themselves and reselling it to somebody else.
Okay, let me ask you about the infrastructure side in terms of not going specifically into technical details, but operators have managed services in a particular way, very much based on hardware, and it took so long to put services up and so on. These guys, the OTTs, are upgrading their services all the time. They just push these applications, they push the updates like very quickly. People are updating the services and getting better and better very quickly. The way things are being discussed at this show with NFV, SDN, Operators Cloud, and so on, is this going to change the nature at which operators can actually compete with these guys? Do you think this is kind of the key aspect of, and you know, we've talked about IMS, IP multimedia subsystem architectures and things that sounded complicated and difficult. Is the cloud the answer, and NFV and SDN the answer to operators' issues, besides being creative in developing new services? Nathan, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, great. We at Opera are big proponents of NFV, right? We have a optimization solution that is built around NFV and Telco Cloud, Operator Cloud. We also have solutions that can do data vending, so you can buy WebPass. It's called WebPass, and the idea there is instead of buying megabytes, you buy hours or time-based access to applications, an hour of Facebook, a day of Twitter. And all of these services are provided to operators in a hosted environment with one thing in mind, right, which is service velocity.
Okay.
So we are big proponents of that. We think that the timeline has to shift from 6 to 9 months to conceive and deploy a service to days, matter of days, right? Because consumers are fickle, their tastes change, you have to do a lot of testing and optimization. That's what OTTs are doing. They're doing multivariate testing, they're running 6 experiments at the same time, sometimes on the same day, and then figuring out what works and what doesn't. And so those are all building blocks. I think these are necessary. Are they sufficient or not, obviously needs to be seen, right? But I think these are all necessary conditions for this agile world.
Pascal, what do you think?
All Streamwide products are run on virtualized environments. So we already made that move, and actually it saves a lot of money. Not only because you save on hardware, but also you save on geo redundancy and a lot of things. Now, we also believe, like you said, that operators' issues are often linked to IT, information systems. One of the ways to help them solve that issue is to propose to them, I would say, a turnkey solution, OTT-like, that would provide for consumers, and right now we've been talking about mainly consumer-oriented OTTs. So the name is Bizoo Messenger, for example, which is a kind of WhatsApp white label that operators can implement in a matter of days, as you said. But also on the business side. The business side is an RQ generating environment that we must not forget. Of course, the hype is on the consumer side, but the business side is making money. You know, it's like airlines. If you don't have the business class, there are no planes flying, right? So business is making money. And for this, we have a turnkey operation called Team on the Run that allows to do white label messaging, IP messaging and voice for a business environment.
Interesting. Mark?
So, you know, SDN, NFV, I think they have a role to play. Are they the key changes required to enable the operators to compete more effectively? No. There's two fundamental issues from our perspective. One is actually the operator's mindset. You know, I think traditionally they've been quite a conservative group, and you contrast that with the likes of Skype and Google, who are very much more adventurous and experimental in what they do. So I think the operators need to change the way they're thinking about services and the services industry, and of course that will reflect in organisational changes as well. And you're right that there's this need to think more like an IT organisation in general, and deploy the systems that move service innovation into much more of an IT framework. And it's not about deploying just closed fixed functionality solutions anymore. It is about having APIs for developers so that you have a much greater diversity of innovative ideas coming into the organisation. You can break away from this traditional telecoms model where only the equipment vendor can implement change on their product or in their service, and actually expanding that out so anyone can add value to the services on offer. I think that's I think those two things, the mindset and the attitude, but also the technical platform in place in the network has got to be follow the model of Google and Skype and be open, be based around standardized or accessible APIs using Java. All these things are absolutely vital.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a catch-22 or 21. It's catch-22 or 21?
22.
22. Because the operators might be adventurous like Google, but they don't have the so you want to implement something and then you go to your network and say, oh, I cannot do it, and if I do it and it doesn't work, it would take me another 18 months to just remove it, or it would be very expensive to remove. So I guess it's a catch-22 between being adventurous and also the infrastructure that you have in place that would not allow you to actually be adventurous in a cost-effective way. Last, very quickly, this is based on a report that you released recently, suggesting that loyalty to OTTs is very weak. I don't know if you want to very quickly comment those results, and then you both tell me if you agree with what OpenCloud found on their new report on loyalty towards OTTs.
Yeah, so we commissioned YouGov, which is a UK-based survey agency, to interview 1,000 consumers in the US, in the UK, Germany and France, so 4,000 in total. And we were looking at the perceptions towards OTT versus network operators. And one of the key points we found when asking those respondents, who do you think is better placed in terms of capability to provide, we were specifically testing voice and video calling services. Who do you think is better placed in that area? And the surprising fact was that 60% of the respondents either didn't know or thought that they were balanced. So the takeout there is that the consumer's mind is not made up yet. There's still a lot to play for. The second point we found when we were looking at various different criteria of the service providers themselves and what they provide to their consumers. So things about whether it's a good value service or service I trust, whether it's cool, whether the service provider is cool and fun or innovative. We kind of saw a mixed picture there. I think for a lot of criteria, the service providers came out very, very strongly. In fact, for good value, the 52% of consumers thought that their OTT service or service provider was a good value offer, compared with 45 on the telco. So it's very balanced in terms of value, which is quite a surprise. When we get down to things like fun and cool and innovative, there's a 3-to-1 bias in terms of the OTT.
Okay. What do you think of those results? Do you mainly agree, think and in line with what you're saying?
It's absolutely true. I'm pretty sure that your kids have a couple of messaging applications on their phone, and they may change the usage depending on the time of the day, who they are talking to. Some of them may be for international stuff, some for local, some community-based. You will have a lot of them, and so once again, the scenery is going to change. The question is, do the operators want to be part of this new scenery or not? But they cannot think of what's going to be 2 years down the road by what they see today, and especially WhatsApp being sold at 19 billion.
Okay. Nitin, very quickly, what do you think of the results?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in the sense that maybe the game's not lost. I don't think any one of us feel that way, right? I think it's also interesting in the sense that there's very little loyalty, but that's the nature of these services these days, right? I think you have to get loyalty by innovating. You don't sort of have contractual loyalties anymore, right? Yeah. So you just have to keep innovating, and the best services will win, and hopefully some of them will be from operators.
Excellent. Nitin, thank you so much. Pascal, Mark, also thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of the show. It's almost finishing, so just to be able to relax myself too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.